So, Caroline, thanks for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about who you are and a bit of your background, just for anyone who's watching or listening.
Yeah, okay, so I guess you'd call me the CEO, but really I have a suite of executives. I'm the managing director of Creased, Puddle. So we're a York-based consultancy and training company. I guess our expertise is in neurodiversity, but people, and we're predominantly a neurodivergent organisation as well. So we're neurodivergent ourselves, or we're the parents and carers of individuals who are neurodivergent, or we have a really kind of intrinsic interest in the whole conversation around neurodiversity and neurodivergence.
Awesome. Okay. Amazing. Well, thanks for coming on first of all. I've been looking forward to this one. So for a number of kind of personal reasons, I've got quite an interest in like neurodiversity, especially around kind of the ADHD kind of side. So, but I'd be interested a little bit in your kind of background. What brought you to actually coming up with this as a company?
Yeah, I think so. I have a diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and even I only ever mention that when it's relevant. I don't walk into a room and just suddenly, "Hiya, Caroline." I'm Caroline. I've got ADHD. In fact, these days I probably don't mention it as much because actually I think that we've kind of gone the other way with stigma. Yeah. So anyway, but in terms of, I think to link it quite neatly with how have I ended up here, I think that one of the parts of my neuro profile is that I'm a relentless problem solver. And I think my background kind of helped me to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And then once that wasn't available anymore, I needed to seek out something else, which was, looking at different solutions and quite innovative and kind of out there. A family member, I was in the police for 21 years. Okay. So I was a sergeant, qualified to inspector. And that fast pace of policing, that kind of going from job to job. And I suppose the more high octane part of policing was really where I sat. Or didn't sit, as the case may be. Ran around a lot. And that really suited my neuro profile because there was lots going on. What I was really bad at was the paperwork side of things. What I was really bad at was the process and the, filling that spreadsheet, Caroline. And, that's what I got into bother with. And so on the one hand, I was really successful, really high arrest rate, really good at kind of that side of things. But then the process side of things, really, really terrible, really, if I'm honest. And so not knowing that I was ADHD at that time, but knowing that I was, good at some things, not so great at others, went into the training department. And that, again, sort of really helped me to understand what I was good at, because I'd not been given that kind of platform before. It became, I guess, apparent when a member of my family was diagnosed as autistic. And I looked at kind of how we as the police were engaging with our autistic communities and could we do any better, and that was kind of like a driver for me. Could we make any improvements? And the answer to that was, actually we could do a whole lot better. And it was through that journey that lots of people in the organisation started saying, actually, I think I might be ADHD, or I think I might be autistic, or I might be, and I'm not telling the business, I'm not telling the organisation, I don't want people to know. And it's just that bit there, I think. I really wanted to understand, like, why don't people want to talk about this? What is it about the deficit model, stigma, about understanding awareness, about that disclosure or sharing, piece that what's missing here? And we were right at the beginning of that conversation 10 years ago. So I left policing and started Creased Puddle in 2017, and probably was asking the same questions, really. Why aren't we talking about it? What is it about this deficit model that leaves people feeling like they don't understand themselves? And it's been really interesting to watch that develop over the past 10 years.
Do you think that's, I'm wondering whether people still find it hard to talk about, or companies or leaders in companies. I think there's still a reluctance, I find, for people to kind of maybe talk about neurodiversity, they're, I think, maybe afraid of saying the wrong thing or all that kind of thing. What's your sort of sense of that?
I would agree, but we've known each other for a long time, and you know that I am all about let's just have a conversation. I saw you both physically relaxed when I said, please don't be afraid just to ask a question. And you use the wrong words, it's fine. I'd just rather people ask the question, because I think that there's if we don't have conversations because we're so scared of using the wrong words and doing the wrong thing, that fear just holds us back. And actually what we really need to do is reduce fear in organisations, because, well, as you know, that helps people to thrive, doesn't it? So,
definitely.
But yes, you're right, there is still. I think that my motivation has always been to talk about neurodiversity in a very inspirational sense, to get in front of it, to say, actually, if we get a load of this stuff right, this is how you can help people to thrive and be the best that they can be. We can minimise these challenges, and as you as an organisation massively benefits. Unfortunately, we don't always create the right environments for that to happen in organisations, and so that message can be, left with a big question mark above it, where people are wondering, like, how are we going to do that then, when it doesn't look like we're going in that direction? So. Yeah.
I remember that's how I first met you, actually. I think I came to some HR kind of training event thing in Leeds, and you were speaking about neurodiversity in a very, inspirational way, and kind of getting the audience asking questions and all that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of... I
still want that as well. And I think that's the thing, is that I mean, you can imagine by now I've pretty much been asked everything. And I do like a really challenging question, because I think that it allows me to, even if I don't know the answer, I need to go away and find out the answer. And so I do like a challenging question. And I also understand that there's lots of fear in this conversation, fear of failure, fear of like organizational risk, reputational risk, health and safety risk for person. There's lots of risk in this conversation. And one thing that, the way to get around that is to be able to really understand the conversation properly, so we can mitigate that risk. But we're only going to do that if we can talk about it openly, aren't we?
And what you say, I totally understand the fear kind of part and like the risk piece. Obviously, you're seeing it from a different angle, so you're going in often as the expert to go and have these conversations. What do you think? What are you seeing as like the biggest fears or risks from people at the moment with it? Because, as I think you said, Clem, the conversation hopefully has moved on a little bit. It certainly has, I believe, in the last kind of 5-10 years. So we're much more open with talking about this. But I mentioned to you before we started filming that there's a family member close to me who has a diagnosis, and actually I'm quite open with chatting about stuff, but I notice that so many people aren't, and just kind of close up if you start to have a conversation.
In organised, I think that the fear of litigation is a huge one,
right?
And where we have sometimes in organisations a real opportunity to really care for our staff, and that would be a really good place to start. What we default to is policy and process, and those things don't. They can often cause conflict, as you well know.
Totally.
So I think, and it depends, I think, where somebody is on their journey. So we might talk about kind of an identity arc for somebody. So when somebody is has entered this conversation, maybe they're watching this podcast, or maybe they've read something, or they've watched, on neurodivergent TikTok, like whatever. But there's something that they're identifying with, and they're saying, I think that's a little bit of me. That's a real change to their identity. And obviously you're a coach, is like you work with identity all the time, don't you? Changes in identity. And it's a helpful model in one sense, because they enter this immersive period where that can be really empowering. It can be, okay, so that explains a lot. And it can, but also, particularly with individuals who are later diagnosed in life, they can kind of look back over their life and think, if I'd have known that, I might have worked somewhere different, made different life choices, might not have married that person, might not have had kids, might have had kids. It's a really kind of, can be a very disruptive time in a good way, and not so much. So some people might describe it as a grieving process. So that immersive period is different for everybody. I think sometimes organisations can want somebody to kind of hurry up to get through that period in order to what we call moving to integration, where it's part of their identity, but they're also still a mum or a dad or a colleague, or they're a dog owner, or I don't know. It's part of their identity, but it's not their whole thing.
It's not the whole.
And it takes a while. I think sometimes, managers or organisations will want to know how long is it going to take. I won't use this phrase. I'm not saying that's what people say, but they might say, how long is it going to take somebody to get over this?
Yeah. I can imagine some people.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's and you can't rush. There's I think that, and conflict, I think, keeps people there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What kind of conflict?
No, you can't have that reasonable adjustment.
Okay.
I think it's a mismatch, I think, because you've got somebody coming in, talking, sharing or disclosing their suspected neurodivergence, because if you've got waiting lists of, 7 years plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your majority of people are going to be undiagnosed. So you've got people coming up and saying, I think I might be neurodivergent. And organisations, have got the memo, you don't need a diagnosis now. Like, I think we've got that one. But then they're sort of thinking, well, actually, what do I need? What do we as an organisation need to do? Like, what do we need to do as a minimum? And so that's when screening tools and things come in, which can cause more confusion than actually offer solutions. But you've got somebody there who is in this really challenging identity part of their lives. And it's a very personal and cellular moment in time that can rock you to your very core, and handled well, it's a beautiful thing. I've seen it. It's empowering. Somebody can, strip away years of trauma with the right support. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. But then they might tentatively ask for some support, but maybe it lands wrong, it comes across the wrong way, or that policy doesn't support that. And suddenly that person that's in that really vulnerable state is having to kind of advocate for themselves. And suddenly they're coming across like this, and it spirals. So it's, I think when we talk about how to support somebody in that really immersive period, I think it's sometimes about time and, giving somebody just time and support.
Space.
and exactly that. And unfortunately, everyone just wants to move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And maybe, again, just listening to you there as well, my mind jumps a little bit to like people want to solutionize and, so actually trying to, the intent is good, but often, by trying to give a solution that actually you're causing a little bit more harm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's clever. So I was going to say, so if I'm a manager and someone comes to me and says, I believe that I've either got autism, ADHD, I'm in process, what have you. What's the best way to handle it? What should we be doing outside of space? Because we've gone from one extreme. Like, what should we be doing?
Mm-hmm. I think it's managers don't always have the language. That's the first thing. Obviously, big shout out to Creased, Puddle. We do loads of line manager training, so that's exactly what we do, right? And let's say that you're not going to get any training, that's not going to be the case. There's no budget for training, right? There's no time for training. All right, okay.
Great.
See you employment tribunal. But I think that there's a couple of things. The first thing is be curious. If you've got nothing else, be curious. Accept the distance between you. I don't know what that feels like. Explain that to me. Yes, you've got things like space and time. Then don't let it just be one-off conversation. It's interesting that, when people grow up and they'll say, oh, remember that English teacher that showed me Wuthering Heights when they were, and it really inspired me, and they were the first person to see me, or whatever. Right, remember that teacher. Mm-hmm. Everyone always remembers the first line manager that you disclosed that to. It's that important. So in our workplace needs assessments, we hear that conversation and how. So it's a big deal, and getting that right for somebody is vital. So I think those two things are really good. I think also the proactive piece for organisations is to equip managers with what is your pathway of support?
Yeah.
To already have that, so they go, all right, okay, yeah, and I know where to get that. So apparently we refer to occupational health, but they might not have the specialism. So we know to go to this great company called Creased, Puddle, for a workplace needs assessment. But also, do we need, how can we, how can we support you? It's a good question. But particularly those later diagnosed, your middle managers, okay, I'm guessing some of the people you coach and support don't actually know what they need and don't actually know what is out there, especially when they're really, they've just entered this immersive period. It's all very confusing. So seeking out that expertise can really kind of leapfrog you forward in terms of knowledge and support.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that does make sense. And it's interesting you talking about like the organisational level, but then also that they're kind of, I suppose, more of the actual doing level at a management level as well. Yeah,
I think so. And I think, everyone goes on about training. I mean, we're massive fans of training. I'm when it comes to training, I can't. Training is so much more than telling people stuff you know. It's actually teaching people, checking that they've learned something. Like the quality assurance around our training is huge. I probably go on about it way too much, but I have a real bee in my bonnet about people who say they offer training and they don't. They offer knowledge.
Yes.
And that's where it's, and some of that can be really cool, right? It can be really good, well-informed, good knowledge, but are you checking that it's actually being trained into somebody? So I'll stop there because that would be a different podcast.
Different point, I'll have to get you back on.
But it boils down to, and there's research to back this up, that if you offer a different reason for how somebody might present or behave, it actually allows you to see past that to the value of them.
Yeah.
And there's, if somebody is presenting or somebody is behaving or somebody does something in a different way, a role or a task they complete, which is kind of atypical to what you're expecting as a manager, instead of thinking, oh no, I need to get them to do it my way, it may well be that that actually their way works for them and potentially could be better than yours. And that's always interesting to see in action.
Interesting. So that, I don't know whether your mind went a little bit with this, so a bit of a coaching kind of principle as well, especially with kind of knowledge-based work, that actually rather than being too directive with how somebody actually completes a task, it's actually having an objective and actually then they're free to go and perform it in any way they want, which is very much a coaching kind of fundamental piece. And would you say that that's fair then for neurodivergent individuals?
I think that it depends on the neuro profile, but yes, and especially when we talk about, I guess we're kind of talking here about one of my pet interests, if you like, but it's sort of integral to everything that we do, which is managing anxiety and managing and maintaining good mental health. Because as you know, if somebody is in a more highly anxious state, then they're not going to deliver their best work. But actually being able to, I think when you said about line managers and what do we do if we're a line manager, if you don't know anything about autism and ADHD and dyslexia, start with lowering anxiety. Just start there. How do you make somebody feel safer, in psychologically safe, physically safe? Even things like, for example, where do they sit in a walkway? Have they got the back to a walkway? Can they sit in a corner and look out? Have they got a choice of where they can work? Thinking about the environment, and that's a whole that could be a separate podcast, is talking about environment. But how just start with anxiety and low anxiety, because particularly in later diagnosed individuals who have built up this resilience and these really strong workarounds, the chances are is that they'll be able to default to their own natural coping mechanisms, but they're not able to access that because of a stimulated amygdala, because the sympathetic nervous system is off the charts, because they're experiencing flight or fight, freeze, friends and flop. Like, they can't access what they have always accessed before. And I think in organisations, this is where we've got us coming in going, oh, spiky profile, neurodiversity, great talents, great expertise, and they're saying, well, actually, no, we've got neurodivergent staff in performance management, they're off sick. The two messages aren't aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the difference between that is anxiety and poor mental health.
And
You've reminded me of years ago, something that I was told by a neurodivergent individual was the worst thing that they could imagine was getting a message on a messaging app saying, have you got a minute?
Perfect.
And
Great
then
example.
nothing coming back.
Yeah.
And I, at the time, thought, oh my God, I do exactly that. I message people in
Yeah.
a friendly way going, have you got a minute?
Yeah.
And I think I'm being friendly. But
Yeah.
then that sets them off on a spiral of, oh my God, what does Clem want to speak to me about? And they can't think about anything, and their anxiety goes through the roof. And that really stood out to me as to, again, it's that trying to think about what could be the impact of how I communicate with this person. How could I make that right for that individual? And how do I also find out more to help me kind of do that?
I really like that. And I think that one thing that managers are scared of is asking the individual things like, okay, so an example being, how many managers will say, welcome to the team. Okay, part of my job is to develop you. I will back you. I'm excited about you, like what you're going to bring, all of that. But as part of that, I'm going to have to give you some developmental feedback on your performance because I care.
Yep.
All right. And that's why I'm going to do it. Okay, so I want to tell you and highlight what you're really good at, but also where we can make some improvements. Yeah, let's support you to get to where we need you to be so that you can be the best you can be, right? But how do I do that? How do I deliver feedback to you in a way that it lands right? And in fact, how often should I give you feedback? Agreeing that, I think, is really key, particularly when we talk about rejection sensitive dysphoria, or what we call RSD, which is something, a massive conversation when it talk about feedback. And it boils back down to your question about objectives and how you want to achieve something, because the way that we deliver feedback, well, it's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got somebody who is really experiencing these characteristics around RSD, so and it's this this extreme reaction to either a perceived or an actual rejection, often described as a pain, a physical pain.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything to stop that, right? So they're people pleasing, they're avoiding tasks, they're going into perfectionism, all of that, right?
Yeah.
Then feedback is a really big deal. And so we work with our own model. We've looked at all the models. We've just done our own because it needs to be very clinical, essentially, and delivered with kindness. And it needs to be really regular and not
Once
waving
a year.
the ambush.
We're back to the annual performance review. This is a topic we've covered lots of times.
Really? Okay,
Why that's such a ridiculous thing.
Absolutely. This kind of, exactly, where we're just going to ambush you every now and again.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, and I find that fascinating, actually. And I think, again, a lot of that kind of ties in with some of the stuff that we've talked about as well. And I know you do a lot of feedback kind of sessions as well. I could do the feedback ninja, running so many many sessions. But it is an interesting thing, isn't it? And it's often a tough conversation, whether you're neurodivergent or not. It can be quite bad, especially receiving out of the blue feedback that wasn't kind of signposted, and it was once a year.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So kind of moving that forward a little bit, and you talk about the frequency piece. I'll be interested just how frequent you think that, or is best practice, or you think it needs to be?
I mean, I'll relate it to my experience as a manager. So we're really, I've said at the start, I'm often described as the CEO, don't have a set of executives, right? Yeah. Because we're completely flat, apart from me. And I know that sounds like a whole load of work for me. And granted, it could well be if we didn't have the infrastructure that we do.
Yeah.
But I think that there's one of the things that we build into what we call the hidden curriculum. So we have a set of rules within our organisation. We're very out there, right?
Yeah.
So we have a PowerPoint, for example, that we'll do, just as a guiding document when somebody starts, and it talks about everything from, can you answer a call at your desk? Can you eat at your desk? Where do you hang your coat? Where do you put your soggy umbrella?
Yeah.
Where do you, is there a social requirement? So it goes into all these nuanced areas. And what that's in a bid to do is to avoid somebody finding those things out by misadventure.
Yeah.
And so immediately you kind of, when we do it, somebody will be sat there going, this is great. This is great. Oh, wow. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Got it. And it avoids then that having to give feedback because they've done something wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
So for us, it's about getting ahead of those expectations.
Yeah.
And I think the two things. Number one, I don't think that managers are specific enough about what they expect.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that I think feedback should be constant.
Yeah.
All the time. And in fact, on this PowerPoint presentation that we use as a guiding document, it will say, pack as many compliments into your day for your colleagues as possible.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes second nature that you've got like this all the time.
Yeah.
I really liked what you did there. Oh, that's nice. Oh, and we quality assure each other's work all the time.
Great.
And that in itself, I'm flummoxed that that's not the way that everyone does it, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It just makes things better. So I think, in answer to your question, it should be constant.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic though, isn't it? I'm as you're talking, I'm thinking like within our organisation and how we run things and stuff, and just how people are. And I think the feedback thing's quite an interesting one. I'm really glad you talked about the compliment side of things and the positive side, which is one that we talk about. Well, I think it was on one of the sessions we did recently with a load of with a cohort of kind of new leaders, and one of the things we talked about was actually trying to just give people more positive feedback. If you're not going to do anything, if you're going to do anything at all, start with that, because people don't give enough positive feedback.
Absolutely.
And often they just start with the negatives, and sometimes then it gets a little bit emotional, and then it actually just turns into a bit of a witch hunt or something. And actually just getting the balance right to create. It sounds like you have, but to get that organisational kind of culture where feedback is seen as a positive thing and it flows freely is kind of, it seems to be a bit of like a panacea that people want to get to.
Yeah, but I also think from a psychology perspective as well, is that you look at, people who are neurodivergent, and we see it when we're doing our workplace needs assessments, will often share that they're kind of winging it. That because these expectations have not been specific enough, that they're kind of just giving it their best guess. And I think lots of people do that, and it's and kind of and I think that particularly is really energy consuming for somebody who is neurodivergent. Understanding, am I doing a good job? Or am I not? And particularly and I'll come back to RSD a little bit here. I've had members of staff that have joined me, and and one member of staff I'm thinking of, for the first 18 months, every time we would have a conversation, and I would always go, can I have a conversation with you about this?
Yes.
And because if I didn't, she'd say, am I going to get sacked for 18 months every single time?
Right.
Are you going to sack me? Are you going to sack me?
Yeah.
And this is the longest job she's ever had. And she's worked for me for sort of 5 years. And she's fabulous. And she just needed to be in a psychologically safe place in order to blossom. But she's taught me so much as well. And I think that, so things like, for example, if I'm onboarding her with something, then I will say, I can hear the words in my mouth, and I have the vision in my head, and I will do my best to translate that and transfer that to her. And then what she will do is she will say, okay, so what I've heard is, and then she will repeat that back to me, but not just now, because that's really valuable in itself. But then it's what I'm going to do is. So those two things for me are really key when we're talking about expectations as a manager.
Yeah.
That's a great technique. Just to get the other person to play back, so you're kind of trying to find out, because there's this gap between people, and you kind of, when you're giving information, you just assume often that the other person is going to receive it as you've given it.
Yeah.
But actually, in that gap, it can be all sorts of things happen, and the other person might interpret it in a totally different way.
Yeah.
So I really like that technique of asking somebody, well, you know, what have you understood from that? Just play it back to me, and then we can just double check we're on the same page, kind of thing. But yeah, adding the do step as well sounds really powerful.
Yeah, I think, and don't get me wrong, like we've worked this out because that's how we get the best out of each other, and we found that out because we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I've onboarded her with this quite a significant piece of work, and she went and said, because I assumed.
Yeah.
And you know what assuming does. I won't say it.
Yeah.
But and so I assumed, and so she was looking at. So the analogy that we'll use is the moon. So if you're in recruitment, right? So we've run out of people and we've got to go extraterrestrial. And and so we recruit ET. Yeah. So as part of the assessment process, ET, I've decided that ET's a boy. Okay, so he's a male. And so we ask ET to if he could please draw the moon. Yeah. So he draws the moon. Now I don't know if you know this, but when you look up, we always see the same side of the moon, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the bit that we all see. But he's still seeing the same thing. He's still looking at the moon, but he's drawing something completely different. The patterns are all different. And I think that for me was a really powerful tool, that when we're doing our line manager training that we'll talk about, like you're looking at the same thing, but you're seeing something completely different. Yeah. So we need to understand and agree what each other is seeing.
Yes.
And it's the tools to do that make a good manager, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
We have an exercise in one of our pieces of training, which is quite similar, actually.
You
get people to draw something.
Yeah.
And then we try and work out how to clarify those assumptions.
Nice.
Things.
Yeah.
I remember you doing, you used an elephant, I remember, in something. You said, everybody think of an elephant.
Oh, I did. Gosh,
and then you asked people how to describe the elephant.
That's right.
Of course, everybody has a totally different elephant.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought? But yes.
It was. They're really down on that, using that one, though, that somebody somewhere would sometimes go, it is Elmer. I'm thinking, oh, damn it. I didn't want anyone to say Elmer. But absolutely. Yeah. Just to show that, given minimal information and an assumption that we'll all come up with different visions in our heads. And I think that, unfortunately now we've either got this, that there's no room for creativity, or we're having to assume too much. And when you talk about, is one particular model good for the neurodivergent? Yeah. It just depends on that person. For example, I would have loved that. So, the best manager I ever had was a police inspector. I was a sergeant, and he said, you have the portfolio for drugs in this town. Okay, so here's the budget, here's the objective, here's your team. Off you go, kind of thing. It was more involved than that, but you get the general gist. And that for me is how you would manage me, to give me that headspace and room. But for somebody who has a more autistic profile, what they might do initially is they're kind of bottom-up thinkers. So they'd want more detail, more specifics. They'd want to be able to come back and ask for clarification. Yeah. They'd want to build those foundations before they could then run. Yeah. And that initial onboarding piece might be more, but potentially they might make less mistakes than me, because I'm just going to go, yeah, right, that's great.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I'm more like that kind of, I could like blue sky thinking really, and just go and run with something. But I've certainly made the mistake in the past of thinking that people in my team could operate in the same way. So in a previous role, I had a group of directors working with me, and I remember giving tasks and said, well, just here's a problem, kind of almost go and solve that, which I would have loved. And then me getting frustrated when people are coming back for details and a lot more detail. And then actually when you reflect on it, you go, well, look, people just work in different ways, and actually knowing more about the people that you're working with allows you to then kind of delegate in the right way for it.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting one that I think often you default to the way that you know.
Yeah. I think the onboarding piece is really interesting as well, because unfortunately we've got often very prescriptive onboarding timings. And somebody who is neurodivergent you might find that actually they need more investment in that onboarding piece. So more time and maybe some more investment, but actually the social drawdown after that is much less than somebody who's neurotypical. And there's been various models that have kind of shown that over the years with research, but things that, organizations aren't always set up to cater for that. And to sit with it and to be able to explain it more or demonstrate it more or imitate it more or practice it more. The onboarding piece is very prescriptive, and then people kind of bounce out. We're seeing exactly that in mainstream education at the moment, with the highest number of children and young people that are out of education that we've ever seen, SEN. So those with special educational needs. I think not having that flexibility within process is hindering our ability to get the best out of people at a very early stage of their careers.
Yeah, it's interesting. That.
Yeah.
So on the flexibility kind of side of things, because that's I find that fascinating. But when I'm thinking applying this either in a large organisation or within education, that's I won't get Clem started on education as well. Like the Victorian kind of principles of it. But and I agree as well. But it's like, so how do we move forward with this? How do we embed something that is flexible within these kind of hierarchies that actually works for people?
That's a massive conversation, isn't it? Thanks for how long have we got? I think that there's lots of organisations are trying different things, and if anybody tells you that they've nailed it, I'd be very nervous of that conversation as being accurate. But there are some really good pockets of good practice that we're seeing. There's absolutely a place for kind of staff associations, employee resource groups, a voice, but where that part of the puzzle falls down is that there's a voice, but then there's no learning off the back of it. So there's no implementation of what is being told. So then that can create a bit of problem. We've got some brilliant HR, human resource professionals who want to, even neurodivergent themselves, want to do a good job and want to implement lots of neuro-inclusive practices. They're thwarted by legal, or they're thwarted by the kind of the doctrine of the process, or the computer says no. Then we have managing risk and threat. So for example, you might want to bring in a universal license so that everybody can access some assistive technology, but actually IT department says no, I'm sorry, that's not compatible because of GDPR data protection provisions. The growth of AI, as that throws in a whole another conversation. And then you've got these kind of established processes within organisations, like, somebody discloses that they think they might be or they are neurodivergent, and we go to occupational health. And unfortunately occupational health not necessarily having the skills that they need. So then it's what do we do now? So there's lots of moving parts here. Unfortunately, there's a lot of whack-a-mole. So there's lots of sticky plasters going on, all those different pieces, moving pieces. And I think that we're still in this, I think as organisations, we're still in this immersive period, this period of flux. Team, methodology. We're still in the storm bit of neurodiversity, as everyone is trying to find where it sits, who owns it. Do you have to kind of, find a magic budget and spend a load of money and then it's sorted? How do you implement the reasonable adjustments? How much do you invest in training? All of that kind of stuff. So I think there's lots of different moving parts to that. But we are seeing, I really want to get across the message that there are some real successes as well. And we see the successes, if I'm really honest with you, when we talk about a manager being supportive. This is not going to surprise you, is it? So it's none of this. You'll be thinking, we could have told them that. Why don't I bring this when we talk about neurodiversity? It's how inquisitive, supportive, how much time that manager is prepared to give, how much that manager can say, right, everyone just back off, I've got this. A little bit of that. It's, often people will default to right, we're going to go to access to work, get a load of assistive technology in, that'll sort it right out. And actually, we see some, but limited, success with that. The real change comes in with people. Good managers, flexible, caring HR teams that really get this, that established pathways, time and space, and it pays back dividends. I see it with my team. It's a beautiful thing to see somebody go from potentially a place of trauma to a place of like, wow, I never thought I'd do that. And that is the best part of my job.
I mean, that's you're definitely speaking our language. That's, I guess, what we really try and emphasize with a lot of these podcasts is that people focus, that caring, leading with kindness, all these kind of things. I guess the kind of awkward question that comes to mind though is what or how much do you come across people who almost roll their eyes and they're just a bit like, everybody's neurodiverse these days, just get on with it type of approach. Is that something that you do see? Because I have this fear that is maybe even on the rise.
And maybe they're neurodivergent themselves, and they're just and they're just sort of kicking back a little bit. When we do see that, like sometimes it's a bit close to home, and maybe somebody's like, in that denial piece. We talk about, they're actually no, this is not happening, and that's not, and parents being really scared about what this means for their children. So fear plays a big part of that. And I think that certainly when we do our training, we'll sometimes get a little bit of pushback about, everyone thinks they're ADHD these days, or everyone thinks they're autistic these days. Actually, what they're saying there, it's not about the words that they're using, it's where they're coming from. So what they're scared of, because actually it feels like an attack, doesn't it? It feels like a confrontational, antagonistic statement to make. And so what they're scared of, what if people do? So for example, what if, let's change the wording and it's, so everyone thinks that they're ginger these days, or everyone thinks that they've got a beard these days, or everyone thinks they've got, whatever. But it's, so I think it's understanding where people's fear is and why aren't they sitting back and thinking, why do people think that they might be a little bit autistic, which granted in itself is not a helpful phrase, right? But that's the kind of terminology that people might do. And I think there's also been loads of misinformation flying around about, pregnant women and paracetamol, sorry, but, there's headlines that just, you can get ADHD from monster drinks and all that sort of stuff. Don't even. But, I think that evidence-based information delivered with kindness and a safe space to ask questions really helps people to be more curious, so that the eye rolling stops. And you've got to understand like what's been their journey. It's not about invalidating other people's experience.
And I think it's an interesting one listening to you there as well. So I've certainly seen from, I suppose, friends and maybe some parents that I know as well who may be worried, or even an older generation as well, worried about the stigma still, and very almost to a point of being like ashamed if one of their children or somebody they know have, or even if they do as well, to the point that they won't even engage and have a conversation, and it's very standoffish with it as well. So, and again, right back to one of your earlier points, I believe that's around the fear part of it. It's the fear of what will other people say, what will other people think, and for you could maybe go a bit bigger with it, but it's quite a British thing, isn't it, as well? I think culturally it's like, stiff upper lip,
absolutely.
Exactly. keep calm and get on with it.
Don't mention it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be a gender thing as well.
Okay.
And this is really kind of anecdotally, but we will sometimes hear from, kind of female partners that, that their male partner is really struggling with this. And they're really struggling to kind of get them on board as parents and carers. And it does boil down to fix. It's not something, if you open that door up, suddenly you know, you also enter that immersive period we talked about earlier. But I remember when that member of my family was diagnosed, somebody said, well, what was the difference then between, you know, before and after? And I said, the shouting stopped.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, what is something that I've taken forward, because it provided a reason for that behaviour or presentation, which made me see past that to what somebody was actually saying, that they were saying, I'm not giving you a hard time, I'm having a hard time.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that there's, within organisations, we talk about, yes, this conversation around neurodiversity needs to be about an individual and an individual's experience and those around them, managers and colleagues, but also parents and carers, because there's a huge number of parents and carers that work within organisations that if you get it right for them, they are with you for life, because you're caring for them so that they can care for them. It's a beautiful knock on, and it's a lovely symbiotic relationship. And also your clients and your customers as well. You've got loads of neurodivergent clients and customers. What are you doing to make sure that accessibility, you are accessible as an organisation as well? And so I think, and again, going back to it, it is about, if you've got nothing else, be curious.
Interesting. Yeah. I like the phrase you said that. I can't remember it exactly, but when you were talking about it, it's not you've got a problem with me, but you have a. So I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm having a hard time. All behaviour is communication. That kind of model. And when we're in the middle of perhaps a really complicated workplace needs assessment, where somebody's maybe absence through sickness or in performance management, and you know there's a real kind of toxic environment wrapped around the whole case, it's for our job is to see behind the words to what is actually going on here, because an occupational health report or a development plan or an action plan, they will just have words on. Our job is to see behind that, to say actually what is going on here. And I'm going to say 90% of the time it's because those involved in the case are anxieties through the roof. Everyone's feeling very unsafe for lots of different reasons, and there's only a limited amount of work that we can do to lower that, but if you can make people at least situationally aware of that, it can help to encourage people just to pause. And tone down. I'm just thinking that tone down the conversations a little bit, and so especially in performance management and stuff as well. And actually, again, going back to one of your comments, having more of a curious conversation. What's going on at the moment? How can we help? Coming at it from a more empathetic kind of standpoint, rather than why is this not working? What have you been? Confrontation.
Raising the temperature rather than trying to lower it. But
I think there has to be a cut-off as well.
And
there has to be a decision that is made, and I think it's making sure that when we have a level 4 qualification, right? It's like 60 hours of learning. It's a brilliant piece of kit. We have HR come on that, and that's a real journey. You can see, kind of their start to finish, what that looks like. And one of the questions that they always ask the legal team when they come in to talk to them on that course is when does reasonable become unreasonable? And I think that's a really valid part. In fact, probably when we were having initial conversations, there was this kind of real push to kind of like, we need to get rid of the word reasonable in these conversations. And I sort of said, actually, no, I don't think we do, because I think that there is a place for everybody at the table. I think that accommodations and supportive measures, reasonable adjustments, they do need to be reasonable. It's understanding, what is reasonable for the business. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of organisations really struggle with. And it's a minimum, is that. That's, it's the reasonable adjustment piece is the bare minimum.
And I'm thinking like organisationally now. So, anyone running a business, self included, like what should we be doing from an organisational kind of standpoint when you're talking about kind of reasonable adjustments and I don't really want to use the word policy, but kind of what's our framework? What should we be kind of doing like proactively, even before you maybe have any neurodivergent people working in the business, like what should we be doing?
Yeah, okay. So where do you start? I guess with this whole conversation. We have this conversation every week. There's organisations from different parts of this journey, and it's so start with those three key points. Yeah. So it's to understand your neurodivergent clients and customers, how accessible they are to you as a business. Yeah. Okay.
And what does that mean?
Okay. So for example, your website, let's take something really specific. Yeah. So we have on our website, Recite Me. Yeah. Okay. So you click Recite Me. Okay.
I've used it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So that means that you can strip it back, you can listen to it, you can change the language, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it does more than that. It tells those people that are accessing your services that you've actually given thought to this, notwithstanding the fact that actually there's legal frameworks now and coming in that are going to mean that becomes a bigger conversation. But then it's also about understanding, when you engaging with your clients and customers, do they know do they know that you've impact assessed some of your products? Yeah. So and you don't have to do all of them, because you'll learn these really key principles that you can map over to lots of different areas. So you don't have to submit every policy for impact assessing, but a quality impact assessing is a really good tool. We will do it. People will send us documents over or training over that they've done, and we will quality impact that for them. And you can learn these kind of key principles around accessibility to do with neurodivergence, and as much as you can, because there's always that degree of reasonableness, be able to implement those. But ultimately, when it comes to your products and services, the most inclusive way for them to access that is for them to be able to choose the format in which they access it. So, for example, this is a great example in that we're being videoed and there might be subtitles on it or optional subtitles. You can also listen to it. So in itself, it's a multimedia format. And it's moving away from our traditional ways of communicating information from one brain or one organisation to another, and making that as multimedia as possible. And there are so many amazing digital tools that will do that, for free for you, and the growth of that is huge. But it's inclusive because it actually taps into the neuroscience around that, the way that brains are formed and different brains access information. And so if at all possible, the best way to do it is for an individual to have options. And as an organisation, you can absolutely do that proactively. So you can say, right, I think that if somebody comes for an interview, it's reasonable for us to offer them a walk-in interview, the questions in advance, to be able to choose the time of day, to decide this range of options. And then just offer them out to everybody.
I like that. Interesting. Walking interview. So actually going for a walk while you do your interview. So I've done walking coaching, but
why did you do walking coaching? What was the reasoning behind that?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? So I've done it a few times. So not me having coaching, but me being the coach. I actually think coaching outdoors is great, especially if you're out in nature, because it actually allows you to freely kind of get into your subconscious a little bit more, and actually you can probably get some more powerful results with it. I also like walking and getting outside personally. So when somebody said, could we do it? I was like, 100%.
It's slightly less maybe confrontational as well, because you're side by side. And then, you're kind of distracted by other things, so you're not thinking about the interaction, I guess, as well. Again, I've not done it much, but I've really enjoyed it when I have. It just, it's just reminded me, actually, the best way in my head of talking to teenagers as well is when you're in the car.
Perfect.
Because they're sat next to you, it's not like you're facing off against each other.
The amount of, birds and bees conversations that have happened in the front of the car. But so yes, exactly that. So there's something about side-by-side immersion, and also side-by-side and movement. So this is where we start to talk a little bit about sensory integration and how the sensory environment integrates with our bodies. But movement is, for lots of people, is a really good way of processing information. So on every single training course that we provide, when we go in, the last thing on our expectation slide is you do not have to sit still. Yeah. So, and we give people options around that. In fact, there's been some recent research showing that movement accelerates learning. And it's all to do with the processing of information. So when you look at, so for example, if you are interviewing me, but if you were interviewing me for a job, if you were interviewing me for a job, then what would we take note about this setup, about where these chairs are, where sort of this environment, this lighting, this table. There's all kinds of neuroscience and psychology around everything in this room. So my brain has already done a workplace needs assessment in here, and with you too. So, but you're right to bring it into. There is something about motion, especially sort of not relying on the reliance on eyeball to eyeball contact, which helps somebody to be able to deliver information and sort of reduce the pressure on that. Some people will often talk about travelling on trains. So I know some people that will do their creative work by buying a train ticket and just travelling up to Edinburgh and back down again to London.
Interesting.
Walking interviews are, if you saw the amount of evidence, and I'll use that term, notwithstanding the fact I used to be a police officer, but the amount of information, if you saw that and then you saw a traditional interview, it's around about 600 to 700% more valuable and accurate. So and then you build in things like soft focus psychology, biophilic, being able to be out in nature. We know that reduces anxiety. All of that. You just need the technology to be able to record it and accurately score it, which you can do. There's loads of note-taking softwares out there. So we've done it before at Creased, Puddle, and it's phenomenal because you can have this. And give them the questions beforehand, absolutely, and that you can take your notes on the walk with you as well, and then you can sit on a park bench or whatever. And so exactly that. So there's some really interesting psychology about side-by-side learning.
Yes,
I like that. And the questions before the interview, and so this has come up a few times in different podcasts as well, especially for neurodivergent people. What's the theory behind it, and kind of your take on it for anyone who hasn't come across it?
So it's all to do with, a big part of it, there is some of the psychology around it, but the big part of it is the processing speed, right? So and you can measure processing speed in certain contexts, right? But it's a really kind of sort of clinical environment where you're given certain tasks and it's timed, right? But so when we talk about 25% extra time, for example, it's like a finger in the air. It's this magic 25% extra time. But anyway, so the questions beforehand so everybody if you come for a job at Creased, Puddle, right, you will get the questions beforehand. I think that there's a fear. Coming back to that word, I think there's a fear that gives people the chance to create fabrications. But that to me says, well, there's a problem with your due diligence model then in that case. I've successfully recruited both neurotypical and neurodivergent individuals using that model. I haven't. It boils down to these reasonable adjustments being the bare minimum. And if somebody feels that they have to request something, then actually they're already on the back foot. But if you create more neuro-inclusive organisations that we've learned the lessons through neurodiversity and neurodivergence, then it benefits everyone. It doesn't have to be a them and us.
I get that.
So you offer the questions first as an option to everyone.
And everyone can, they can deliver that information back in a PowerPoint presentation. They can come in and have a formal interview. They can bring their notes in. We'll send them pictures of the interview beforehand. All of that.
And with I'm going for specific with it. So with the questions, so in terms of you setting these questions, so in my mind where this is going, I'm thinking, obviously doing a lot of recruitment or working with numerous customers and thinking, actually, do your interviewing skills have to be slightly better? Do your questions have to be better? Do you have to be a little bit more kind of proactive and purposeful with your process around this? Because we see quite a lot of reactive stuff, or someone will ring me up going, James, we just need another so-and-so. We just need this person. Does that make sense?
It does. So you be careful what you do here, because I'm an expert on questions. So I train police officers in how to ask neuro-inclusive questions. Yeah. So there are some lessons that have been learned, and there's some research behind this as well. Yeah. So, for example, there is so don't ask multiple questions. The question should not be an advertising soundboard for how great your company is. Okay, here at Creased Puddle, this is who because that person has to process that actually non-relevant information before you actually get to the questions. That's one piece. Multiple questions don't work. In the sense that the person, even if they're neurotypical, will often say, sorry, can you just repeat that for me? We know that, like, why aren't we hearing it? So actually ask a question and then pause and then ask another question. Those are two separate questions. So choice questions, they can also be problematic, because if somebody's really literal in their interpretation of language, lots of people neurodivergent are, then actually they might be looking at A, B, C, and D and thinking, hang on a minute, it's none of them. So that again can be quite problematic. My advice, without going too much down this road, because I'm having to really keep it basic, is provide context. So why do you want to know? What is the relevance to this information? Why do you want to know? So why is it relevant that you want this information? And so provide some context and then ask the question. And the setup of that interview can explain that. So you can literally say in when you send out the questions, or in a pre-piece what to expect in your interview, that you will ask a question and you will give some context and then you will ask a question. But it also needs building in of something called predictable unpredictability, so that individual knows, for example, that you might ask a supplementary question that isn't on the questions beforehand. Because, and if you think about predictability as being one of the key things that you actually have some control over, so you as the interviewer could send me pictures of where we're going to be interviewed. You could send me the questions beforehand. You could send me a lovely picture of your beautiful face. You could send me, you could give me information so that I can create a schema in my head to go, this is what there's something here. There's a framework and that will help reduce anxiety around that. And then you're going to get much more out of me in an interview.
Interesting.
Yeah, because interviews are just such artificial situations, aren't they? They're very anxiety inducing. They're just such a weird way, I always think, of actually trying to assess if somebody's going to be able to do the role, because you've literally created this really weird sort of environment. But again, I guess unless you've got all the time to kind of bring them in for a period, it's what else could you do, really?
Lots of people who are neurodivergent will want to show you.
And
I think that is really, we've always done that. So one of the things that we get asked for a lot, particularly with coaching actually, is how do we help our neurodivergent staff advocate for themselves in a way that's likely to help them to get what they need, right? And so they come across right and they know who to go to and what to ask for, and etc. Right? And I think that is particularly in an interview situation, can be. There's lots of people I know that are brilliant at what they do, but actually, telling somebody how brilliant they are is they really struggle with that. And you work in the tech sector, so I'm sure that's something that seeing you being able to draw out their skills and their strengths. Interestingly, what we see in the neurodivergent community is often that they will choose companies that their values align with theirs over and above what the kind of the financial reward. And which doesn't, contributes unfortunately to the disability pay gap, but it's a relevant part of the conversation. But actually values are often the real driver for somebody who's neurodivergent, and aligning those values the problem is sometimes within organisations is that these values are on the back of a toilet door, and actually aren't being experienced in the day-to-day running of the organisation. And this, particularly if somebody is still in this immersive period of their lives and their identification, you know, they're looking at these values and thinking, no, you're not open, and no, you're not. There's no trust here, and so then they, you know, they might go to find something alternative. When we built a model with a brilliant psychologist called Marjorie Raymond, and because you can measure what somebody's good at, right? You can use tools to measure what somebody's good at, you know, and they are called strength-based assessments, and they're a brilliant piece of kit. But workplace needs assessors, particularly that we train in organisations, art psychologists, and they don't have to use these tools. So we use a framework whereby, because we know that neurodivergent individuals are often value driven, so you're using values to identify strengths, which then map over to jobs. And I'm sure that, again, that's a framework that you work with all the time. So we show that in real life. We've got case studies that show how somebody went from this, I don't know what are you good at? I don't know. I don't think I'm good at anything. Actually, now I really don't think I'm in this horrible toxic environment, and actually my confidence on the floor and my self-esteem shot, and you know, I don't know what to do next. What are you good at? I don't know. I have no idea. And one of the skills of a good workplace needs assessor, given the right circumstances, is to be able to go, okay, but let's start with, you know, being able to draw out those keywords which then align with values, which then align with skill sets and strengths, to even if it means a migration away from that role.
And that's interesting as well, the piece of kind of moving away from that role as well, and something that we've kind of talked about previously as well. And probably not from a neurodivergent piece, but actually that skill of a good manager sometimes is to understand that and actually say, well, you know, you might be best fit over in this particular area and skills matching that, and even sometimes it isn't the right organisation for you as well, which is the job of a good manager sometimes, to be able to have those kind of conversations with people as well.
Definitely.
I mean, a member of my staff left earlier on this year, and he's gone to work outdoors. We knew that was his happy place. He left with my absolute blessing, because even though he loved his job and he loved what he did, it was the wrong environment for him. And environment is everything. And we don't start there. We start with task. We've boiled things down to linear too much, and we don't consider environment enough. And there's some really interesting research that's coming out about that at the moment. I think it's being a good manager is noticing when it's that, you know, that square peg and that round hole. We're not going to find. Neither of us is going to come out this well. But it's. I think it's certainly with moving on. Sometimes it's about how you support that person to move ahead and move on.
You mentioned environment there, and that's brought up the very common or popular kind of question at the moment about remote versus kind of in office. And I think you mentioned earlier on, actually, this sort of almost, there's a bit of a maybe a movement more back into offices after obviously a period of lots of flexible remote working. What's your sort of thoughts on that, and in terms of how remote works or doesn't work for different people?
So in lockdown, and there's been some research around this as well. So the National Autistic Society did a small piece around how did autistic individuals fare in online interviews, and actually found them to be more beneficial because they weren't having to process environment, and you know, research has backed up that 90 to 95% of autistic individuals have a sensory processing difference. So environment really matters if your neuroprofile is one of autism, so that was quite interesting. I think that having we are noticing that organisations are wanting to bring people back into the office more. I think that's managing that change for neurodivergent individuals. It can be a challenge, but it's if we can put a man on the moon, we can do this, right? But I think people get very fixated about the problem and just can't seem to move this big block, right? But I think that, and that works both ways for the individuals themselves, being able to provide good coaching, so that they can really understand what that fear is. If synaptic pruning means that, if we don't use it, we lose it. And if you've been out of the workplace for a period of time, and then it's like, no, you get back into that workplace. That's actually, for somebody, particularly if they have social anxiety, that's a barrier. That's a huge wall.
Huge.
So I think that it is about bringing somebody in really early on to help people navigate that change. Give them a really clear objective about, look, this is going to be happening, but we want to talk about how it happens, and we want you to be part of that process. And I think coaches can be a really, really powerful tool to support the individual to navigate that process. Often in our workplace needs assessments, we might say, I think this needs a healthy conversation about whether or not you need this person in a workplace. And we've seen some real success with that, where sometimes managers, particularly in SMEs, have kind of thought, well, no, they need to be in the office. They've just got to be here. And so our kind of, our job is to kind of just gently, with care and support, just encourage people to maybe think, do they really? And I think that's probably where our skill set comes in.
I guess in a sense, as you having that curiosity again, that flexible thinking, rather than a binary kind of everybody needs to be back in, and we're not listening to any reasons why not. Just that bit of flexibility, curiosity to think, okay, well, what is going to be the impact here? What's the benefits? What's the drawbacks? How do we adapt to make it kind of work as best we can for everyone?
What's the incentive? What is it? It's healthy to find out, what's in this for me? And if you can provide that, along that journey, then there might be some bit more leverage there. But yes, you're right. And I think that, and again, not to go too far into the education piece, because that's a whole different, but I think that we over brighten and we overstimulate our classrooms. And when it comes to this explosion, as you hear, this explosion of, neurodivergence in mainstream education, it's because of stimulated amygdalas. It's to do with sympathetic nervous systems. We've always had different neuroprofiles going back to, the Paleolithic period, right? This isn't new. But what we have is the overlay of anxiety on top of that. And often these trained sympathetic nervous systems. So when we talk about, kind of helping and supporting somebody, what organisations sometimes aren't prepared for or aren't prepared to do is to help and support somebody for maybe the 8 months, a year that it takes to untrain a sympathetic nervous system that's been at that heightened state for 20 years.
Wow. Okay. And so you talked about bright lights there. Okay. And that's interesting because I haven't come across that. So I actually quite like a bright light. But so what is that all about? I suppose is the question. And what else should we be doing environmentally, like as an organisation or as a school, to help?
So, so the way that the body processes information around it, is so that you might liken it, like I said, we call it sensory integration. So some brilliant occupational therapists that are doing some groundbreaking work in this field that would blow your mind. There's the OT for me in York, Lizzie Huxford and her team. What she doesn't know about sensory integration for young people and adults is not worth knowing. I encourage you to get her in. She will blow your mind, genuinely. So in terms of environment, we should be starting there. In fact, when we talk about the hierarchy of needs, then don't even bother about anything else until you've got the sensory environment sorted out. Because, so for example, I walked in here and immediately was impacted by these lights. And initially it used to be, so people who are autistic don't like loud noises, people who are autistic don't like bright lights. That was the narrative. The research has been done now to show that people who are ADHD can either have this highly sensitive or undersensitive experience when it comes to environments as well. And that explain things like distractibility, easily distracted, inability or challenges with concentration and focus, for example, as well. So when we so often, it's sort of been the poor relative really of the conversation has sensory environments, and we noticed really early on that it wasn't just about people who were autistic. The evidence was there about people who were autistic having these hyper or hypo nervous systems, but actually we now. But there were people who are dyslexic and ADHD reporting these challenges. So we've always called them areas of overlap, like ever since we started. And you can understanding it literally on a cellular level, how thick the myelin sheath is on an axon, on a nerve cell, helps to explain why information flies into some individuals with no traction or limited traction. And then you'll have heard phrases like overwhelm, meltdown, burnout, okay? And that's because this information is flying in unchecked. So it's like trying to get from here to the Manchester airport at 5 o'clock on a Friday night. There's loads of traction, isn't there? Loads of cars on the M62. You're not going to get there anytime quick. So that would be somebody who is hypersensitive. So that's somebody who potentially seeks out information, likes bright lights, likes loud noises, likes pressure, for example. So seeks out sensory information. Somebody, but then 3 o'clock in the morning on the M62, you fly through to Manchester Airport, and that's somebody who's so hypersensitive. So again, that information is not going unchecked. So all that information is flying in and it backs up. So when we talk about processing information and giving people time, sometimes that can be sensory processing, which is why people will take themselves out of environments that are, we use the term insulting, to their nervous systems. That they remove themselves from one environment and go to a different environment, maybe darker, less noise, less stimulus, less people, less smells, because their body is saying, I need to process this before we can carry on. But unfortunately, in organisations, we have bright lights, lots of lights coming off screens. We have white desks, we have white, and then we have, and there's no time to give the body time to process and end up in this kind of more regulated state.
Interesting.
You're making me think of we joke about my insistence on a lunch break, partly because I'm always starving, but also because you need a break in my head. But there's lots of organisations, let's just work through lunch. Let's just so when we're running workshops and things, we would always make sure there's breaks included so that people get a chance to just maybe regulate, maybe to just get out of the environment, stretch the legs, get fresh air, whatever works to kind of just reset a little bit. And pushing on doesn't really serve anybody in my head.
No, I think there's something about cognitive flow. So if someone's in, then it's giving them a chance to be able to carry on. But you're right in that, and it's educating organisations about the benefit of putting something back into that energy bucket. And really investing in that. And also reducing the stigma about somebody who doesn't want to sit in a busy, noisy canteen, talking about Love Island, but actually they much prefer to go by theirself, for a walk. They're not being antisocial. Actually, they just need to go recalibrate, reset.
It's interesting. So I've talked about this a few times as well, but I say that I'm like a dog sometimes. I need walking twice a day. But I do. I need exercise almost every day. And I have to go for a walk at lunch. I can't stay still for a good period of time. But that just resets me. And talking about your energy bucket, actually, if I've been sat still all day or in the same room, then I'll often feel low on energy. Go for a walk and I'm reinvigorated again.
And good occupational therapists will talk about this. And for people working in call handle centres, that's really difficult to do. They're often regulated on the amount of times they can get and go to the toilet. It's really, but there are things when we talk about environments, we'll talk about you as an environment. What can you do to this to do here within your 3 feet, and then there's the bigger environment as well. So you can an interesting on the way here, I stopped for some petrol, and the garage had yellow glasses, night driver glare, right? Just on a little stand. And that's really interesting because that reduces visual stress.
I've never seen that.
I saw them recently, actually.
Very interesting. So that actually it reduces the glare of oncoming traffic. And I thought that was really interesting. That's kind of tinted glasses. But there are things that you can do. Lots of some people will sit at the desks with a pressure vest on, or a weighted lap pad, or something around the shoulders, or compression garments under their shirts. So I know senior executives that will wear very tight compression garments, but it helps to reduce anxiety. If you like that kind of stuff, have a little look at the work of Dr. Bendybrain. So Jessica Eccles on YouTube, she's fabulous, and talks a lot about hypermobility and anxiety and hormones. So it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but can really encourage you to do that. But yes, environments matter. We just don't give them the credence that they deserve.
Yeah, and like I know. Again, I've seen a few tech companies as well who have like access to fidgets and stuff as well, and like that type of stuff in the environment to try and set it up, and different lighting and different setups. Actually, it's kind of coming back a little bit with you talking about it. Going, actually, I've been into their offices and they have different, in like quiet rooms and stuff like that as well. It's having that autonomy of your environment very often. That's where where do you start? If you can offer people, if you can offer people at least, even if it's just 2 options, don't offer people 10 options, because that can cause more anxiety, can't it? There's too many options choice, but if you can offer people a choice of 2, even if it's a choice of 2 chairs of where to sit in an interview, we'd like to take a seat, you can choose a chair. If you can offer people choices and make other things very specific and very black and white. So for example, on this table we've got a good glass, right? I approve of your glasses, right? But in interviews sometimes you've got those little plastic glasses with a tiny bottom, and if you pour something in it can go all over. So little things like that. If you've got somebody who's dyspraxic and has challenges with motor control, actually they'd be shaking anyway because they're in an interview. You're going to be really nervous. But having you pouring my water and it being here tells me explicitly that that's my water and I can drink it, and I'm not going to spill it. It's an ease. You've just made that accessible. Or even if it's just getting a bottle of water and opening it in front of me saying, there you are, that's for you. Just having just these little key things around environment can make all the difference to somebody producing their best selves. Interesting. I think you need to be a lot more, I'm reflecting for myself, be a lot more thoughtful about it and purposeful with it. It's quite interesting, because when you reflect on yourself, how you like to operate, yes, it can make a big difference as well. Going back to the kind of, if you're a manager or leader with neurodiversity, how, from the type kind of conversations that you've been having, and it's obviously a huge topic, right? And it depends what your neurodiversity is. But if you find out maybe later in life, what are your kind of thoughts on that, about how you would approach kind of dealing with talking to your organisation and then maybe your team with it as well?
It's a big decision. Some, particularly kind of those in positions of power, might really worry about how other people are going to perceive them. It comes back down to that identity. Are they going to see them as a manager or now an autistic manager? It's a very personal and private thing. Do they need to? How a good coach can really help them decide the benefits of or not. It's a very personal decision. So all parts of that, in terms of being a manager, there are some excellent neurodivergent managers out there, and those that diagnose autism and ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, etc. Excellent managers, and helping them to find how they are how they are as a manager is the art of a good coach, isn't it? You know that. Yeah. And I think that the biggest part of that is it comes back to, I hate to be boring, but it comes back to psychological safety. If that manager feels that they can be vulnerable within their team and their organisation, then they potentially will navigate that much more smoothly. There are also some amazing managers that have been, part of the 30% that have said, to more junior members of the organisation, I'm neurodivergent, but this is what I've learned about myself, and being kind of role models within an organisation. There is a huge business case for them feeling safe enough to disclose that. Where they might have challenges with elements of that managerial role, again, it comes down to the skill of a good coach very often. I know one individual, so she's a member of an SLT, and she is, and she's a management consultant in London. She's outsourced her kind of some of the more kind of peopling kind of elements of her role. So she's in true kind of management consultant style, right? So she's outsourced them. So what she's very good at is that her expertise is managing change in massive organisations. And so what she's really good at is that piece. What she finds really difficult is kind of, as she might call it, the more soft skills elements of her role. So the organisation has listened to her, and she has somebody that kind of sits alongside her, if you like, that kind of helps to kind of manage those more softer skills required. So they've not lost her, and they're managing to, still capitalise on her amazing expertise by outsourcing some of those challenges that she might experience. And I think that sometimes that's what it boils down to, is remodelling the way that we see the role of manager. There's so much going on for managers at the moment that actually just caring for staff, a lot want to, but don't have the time to do it.
I think that's an interesting topic as well at the moment. It could be another whole podcast as well, but like the certainly with challenging kind of economic times and stuff as well, that where some of the teams have kind of actually been downsized, that more work gets piled on people, especially at a management kind of level, especially first-time managers, I think, as well. So you've maybe got your individual contributor bit, plus your team leader management kind of piece as well. And actually, in some respects, that's almost like two jobs. So it's really, it can be really challenging, especially if you're understaffed generally as an organisation.
You're kind of expected to do two jobs, not one suddenly. If you get promoted, then all of a sudden that's on top of what you've already been doing.
So if we're upping the cortisol and we're upping the then it has challenges with so what we call executive function. So the prefrontal cortex, this ability to organise and plan and prioritise and man all of these. So if we're adding more variables in there, and then we're impeding, the front of the brain to be at its best, then it's almost like a perfect storm, isn't it? And so we work within that a lot, especially for our kind of more complicated workplace needs assessments. If you're on a performance improvement plan or an action plan, so the adrenaline, the cortisol is up, and yet we want you to perform better. And actually, what if they're neurodivergent, has some challenges with exec functioning anyway? So are we setting people up to fail with that process? There has to be a process, but it has to be fair and have humans right at the centre of it. And I think that's sometimes where we lack a little bit.